He called me that lady at our wedding, like I was furniture he'd acquired, not the woman standing in the dress he chose. I smiled for the cameras. Sign the register. Let him believe I hadn't noticed. 3 hours later, I held the stake steady while he finally said my name. There's a particular kind of silence that follows betrayal you've already mapped. The guests are still drinking champagne from crystal older than Alabama itself, laughing at jokes about eternity and bloodlines, when you realize the man at the altar never saw you as anything but strategy. Clint Jones called me that lady of mine during the toast. Careful, distant, the way you'd reference property you're pleased to have secured. 9 centuries of existence, and he still doesn't understand that women raised in rooms where power speaks softly learn to listen with our entire bodies. My father taught me leverage before he taught me love. Clint taught me something more dangerous, that being chosen and being positioned aren't the same thing. If you've ever smiled through your own erasure, you already know why some stories don't get told in polite company. This is one of them. Stay if you're ready. The Redmond Hotel ballroom in Birmingham smells like old money and older secrets. I'm 27 years old, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's cars, and I can taste the rot underneath all this elegance. My father, Jonathan Hamilton, stands near the bar talking to men whose companies have been bleeding Alabama dry for decades. Lumber barons who clear-cut forests. Real estate developers who displace entire neighborhoods. Financiers who structure loans designed to fail. I've learned not to ask questions about my father's work. Women raised in rooms like this understand that power doesn't explain itself. It just expects you to smile and look appropriate while it does what it does. But tonight feels different. The air in the ballroom has gone strange. Conversations keep stopping mid-sentence. Men who've never looked nervous in their lives keep glancing toward the entrance like they're waiting for something they don't want to arrive. Barbara. My father's hand on my elbow, firm enough to be guidance. I need you to stay close tonight. Why? He doesn't answer. Just steers me toward a corner where the light doesn't quite reach, where we can see the room but the room can't quite see us. My father's been afraid before. I've watched him navigate recessions and investigations and the particular terror of powerful men realizing they might lose what they've taken. But this is different. This is the fear of prey. What's happening? I ask quietly. Someone's here who shouldn't be. His voice has gone low. Careful. If he approaches you, be polite. Don't offer anything. Don't promise anything. Just be exactly as forgettable as you know how to be. I should be offended. Instead, I'm intrigued. Because my father has spent 27 years teaching me to be memorable in all the ways that matter to men like him. Educated enough to navigate their world, beautiful enough to be an asset, restrained enough to never threaten their control. Forgettable isn't in my training. The ballroom doors open. Clint Jones walks in like he's already decided how the night ends. He's tall, elegant in a way that looks effortless, but probably isn't. Dark suit, no tie, the kind of presence that makes everyone else look like they're trying too hard. But it's his eyes that catch me, not the color, not the shape, but the way they move through the room like he's cataloging every person, every alliance, every weakness. My father's hand tightens on my elbow. That's him. Who is he? Someone who destroys what men like me build. He says it matter-of-factly, no anger, no defiance. Just recognition. He's been doing it for longer than this country has existed. I watch Clint Jones move through the crowd. Men step aside without realizing they're doing it. Conversations die when he passes. He's not threatening anyone, not visibly, but there's something in the air around him that speaks a language older than the one we're using. He's vampire. I've known they existed since I was 19, since the night my father brought me to a meeting that went badly, and I watched a man survive injuries that should have killed him. Daddy explained it the next morning over coffee, like he was describing a business competitor. Some people are mortal, some aren't, and the ones who aren't have been running things longer than we've been keeping records. Stay here, my father says. Don't move. He leaves me in the corner and walks toward a group of men near the center of the room. I watch them close ranks, shoulders touching, the instinct of herd animals who've just realized the wolf is among them. Clint Jones stops 10 feet away from them. He doesn't speak, doesn't threaten, just stands there with his hands in his pockets like he's admiring the architecture, and I watch my father's world realize it's about to end. Someone should leave. Someone should make an excuse, find the exit, survive the night, and rebuild tomorrow. But they don't. They stand there frozen by the particular paralysis of men who've never had to run before. I should stay where my father put me. Should be forgettable, invisible, safe. Instead, I walk toward Clint Jones. I don't know what I'm doing. Don't have a plan. But something in my chest is pulling me forward, not attraction, not yet, but recognition. The way you recognize another person who's learned to read the room before entering it. He notices me when I'm 5 feet away. His eyes shift from the men he's judging to me, and for half a second, I see something flicker across his face.
Surprise.
Excuse me, I say quietly, my voice pitched low enough that the men behind me can't hear. I don't believe we've met. He studies me. Not the way men usually study women at these things, not assessing, not calculating value. He's trying to understand why I'm standing in front of him when everyone else has enough sense to keep their distance. Barbara Hamilton, I offer, not extending my hand, because I learned years ago that some introductions don't require touch. My father is Jonathan Hamilton. I believe you're here because of him. Among others. His voice is quiet, controlled. The kind of voice that doesn't need volume to carry weight. You should go back to wherever he told you to wait. Probably. I don't move. But you are about to do something that can't be undone, and I'm curious whether you've considered all the consequences. I've had 9 centuries to consider consequences. 9 centuries.
God.
He says it like someone else might say 9 years, and I realize I'm standing in front of something that's survived longer than every institution I've been taught to respect. Then you know that destroying them tonight, here, publicly, will create investigations. Federal attention. The kind of scrutiny that makes it harder for people like you to move freely. I'm guessing. Making it up as I go. But his expression shifts slightly, and I know I've touched something true. There are better ways to dismantle what they've built. Quieter ways. Ways that don't leave bodies that need explaining. He's silent for a long moment. Behind me, I can hear my father's breathing, sharp, shallow, the rhythm of a man who's realized his daughter just walked into the line of fire. Why? Clint Jones finally asks. Why what? Why are you protecting them? The question hits differently than I expect. Not accusatory. Genuinely curious, like he actually wants to understand. I'm not protecting them, I say carefully. I'm protecting you from making a mess you'll regret. There's a difference. Something in his expression changes. Not softening, he doesn't seem like someone who softens, but recalculating. Reassessing. What's your name again? Barbara Hamilton. He nods slowly, like he's filing it away. Then he looks past me at the men who've been holding their breath and says, loud enough for them to hear, you have 60 days. After that, I stop being patient. He leaves. Just walks out of the ballroom like nothing happened, like he didn't just grant a stay of execution to men who probably don't deserve it. The room exhales. My father reaches me 3 seconds later, his face pale, his hands shaking in a way I've never seen before. What did you say to him? I asked him to wait. And he listened? I don't have an answer. Because I don't understand it either. Don't understand why a 900-year-old vampire who came here to destroy everything would stop because a 27-year-old mortal woman asked him to reconsider. But 2 weeks later, he calls. And when I hear his voice on the phone, low, careful, interested, I realize what I've done. I haven't saved anyone. I've just made myself useful. The first time Clint takes me to dinner, I wear the wrong dress. Not wrong in any way that matters to most people. It's beautiful, expensive, appropriate for the restaurant he's chosen in Mobile. But I've dressed for a man who wants to be impressed, and Clint Jones stopped needing to be impressed somewhere around the French Revolution. He notices. Doesn't comment. Just holds my chair with a kind of old-world courtesy that would seem performative on anyone else, but on him feels like muscle memory from centuries of practice. You didn't have to say yes, he says once we're seated. Not an accusation. An observation. I know. Then why did you? I could lie. Could tell him I'm curious about vampires, about immortality, about the kind of power that outlives empires. But I've spent 27 years watching my father lie to men who matter, and I've learned that the truth, delivered carefully, is often more disarming than fiction. Because you listened to me that night at the gala. And men who've lived 9 centuries don't usually listen to women who've barely lived 3 decades. He smiles. It's small, controlled, but genuine. You'd be surprised how rarely anyone says anything worth hearing. We talk for 3 hours. He asks about my education, Vanderbilt, art history, a degree I've never used because my father needed me managing his social calendar more than museums needed another curator. He asks about Alabama, about what I see when I look at the place I was born. He doesn't ask about my father's business. Doesn't mention the 60 days he gave them. Doesn't acknowledge that I'm sitting across from him because I stood between him and violence. When he drives me home, he doesn't try to come inside. Just walks me to the door of my apartment in Montgomery like we're living in a century where that matters. Can I see you again? He asks. I should say no. Should recognize that whatever this is, it's not what it looks like. But I've spent my entire life being useful to my father, being decorative at his events, being exactly what rooms like the Redmont Ballroom needed me to be. And Clint is looking at me like I'm something other than utility. Yes, I say. The second date is coffee. The third is a gallery opening in Birmingham where he stands in front of a Rothko for 20 minutes without speaking, and I realize he's not seeing the painting. He's remembering something it reminds him of, some moment from a life that stretches back further than I can conceptualize. What are you thinking about? I ask quietly. Vienna. 1952, there was a woman who painted like this. All emotion, no form. She died before anyone recognized what she'd made.
He glances at me.
You remind me of her sometimes. Because I'm emotional? Because you see what other people miss. I don't know how to carry a compliment like that. Don't know what to do with a man who's comparing me to artists I've never heard of from cities that remade themselves while he stayed constant. By the 4th date, I'm not counting anymore. We fall into a pattern, dinners, long drives through Alabama back roads where he tells me about the South before it was the South, when it was just land, and the people who'd lived on it for thousands of years before Europe arrived. He talks about justice the way other men talk about hobbies.
Casually.
Inevitably. Like it's something he does because the alternative is unthinkable. The men at that gala, I say one night when we're parked outside my apartment and neither of us wants the evening to end. What did they do? What they've always done. Taken more than they needed. Hurt more people than they counted. Built empires on bones they didn't bother to bury properly. And you were going to kill them. Yes. No hesitation. No moral wrestling. Just acknowledgement. Why didn't you? He looks at me then, really looks at me, and I see something in his eyes I haven't seen before. Something almost like tenderness. Because you asked me not to. And I wanted to understand why someone like you would step between monsters and their reckoning. He kisses me for the first time that night.
Carefully.
Like he's afraid I might break, or like he's afraid he might want this too much to stop. When he pulls away, his hand is still cupped against my jaw, and I can feel the coolness of his skin, not cold, just absent of the heat that mortal bodies carry without trying. I fall in love with him slowly. Then, all at once. It happens in quiet moments. The way he orders my coffee before I arrive, because he's memorized how I take it. The way he listens when I talk about art, about the paintings I wanted to restore, the exhibitions I wanted to curate before my father's world consumed mine. The way he makes me feel protected without making me feel small. And God, after 27 years of my father's control, that difference matters more than I know how to say. 3 months in, he starts asking me to events. Nothing formal. Just dinners with business associates, gallery openings where Alabama's old money pretends to care about culture. I don't think much of it. He's introducing me to his world the way people do when relationships get serious. But I notice things. The way conversations shift when I mention my last name. The way men my father knows start taking Clint's calls when they've been avoiding him for weeks. The way doors open not because of who Clint is, but because of who I am, who my father is, the legitimacy my presence grants to a man who's been operating outside their circles for centuries. I tell myself it's coincidence. Tell myself I'm being paranoid, that not everything is strategy, that sometimes a man just wants to show off the woman he's with. But then the investigations start. First it's Randall Oakes, one of the lumber barons from the Gala. Federal charges for environmental violations, tax evasion, bribery. Then it's Vernon Pierce, the real estate developer. Then another. Then another. Like dominoes falling in sequence, each one triggering the next, and I watch my father's world start to crack. Daddy calls me more often. Asks if I'm still seeing that Jones fellow. Asks if I could put in a good word, maybe convince Clint to ease up, use his influence to make certain problems go away. I tell him I'll try. I don't try. Because part of me knows, has known since that night at the Redmont, that these men deserve what's coming. But I don't connect it yet. Don't see my own fingerprints on the collapse. Clint never lies to me. That's the thing I'll remember later, when I'm sorting through the wreckage trying to understand how I missed it. He never says anything untrue. He just omits, redirects, answers the questions I ask while carefully avoiding the ones I should be asking. How did you get Pierce to talk to the FBI? I ask one night over dinner, because Vernon Pierce spent 30 years bribing officials and suddenly he's cooperating with federal prosecutors. I didn't get him to do anything, Clint says. Which is true. He didn't. But what he doesn't say is that I did, that my introduction at a charity dinner 3 weeks ago put Pierce in a room with people who knew exactly what questions to ask, exactly which pressure points to press. I am the access point. The moral shield. The way into a world that's been closed to outside judgment for generations. And I have no idea. 6 months after that first dinner in Mobile, my father's accounts get frozen. Federal investigators, he tells me over the phone, his voice shaking in a way I've never heard before. They're saying things that aren't true, twisting everything, and can I please talk to Clint? Please ask him to help, because surely a man with his resources, his connections. I promise I'll ask. I do ask. Clint listens with that careful attention he always gives me, touches my hand across the table, says quietly that some collapses can't be stopped once they're in motion. He's not wrong. But he's not telling me the whole truth either. That he set them in motion. That I helped him do it. That every introduction, every dinner, every moment I legitimized his presence in rooms where justice had been locked out for decades, I was the key that opened the door. I don't see it yet. Won't see it until it's far too late to matter. But somewhere deep in my chest, something starts to ache. A feeling I can't name yet. The particular grief of suspecting you've been useful when you thought you were being loved. My father calls the meeting himself. Private estate outside Birmingham, the kind of place where Alabama's old power has been making decisions that matter for longer than most people can remember. Just the men from the Gala. Just the ones whose world is closing in. One last attempt to contain what's already consumed them. He doesn't invite me. I wouldn't expect him to. But he calls me the night before, and his voice sounds like something's breaking inside him that's been solid my entire life. I love you, Barbara, he says. Not as punctuation. As thesis. I know I didn't always show it the way I should have. I know I asked more of you than I gave. But I need you to know that everything I did, even the things I shouldn't have, I did because I wanted to build something that would protect you after I was gone. My throat closes. Because this is the voice of a man who knows he's not going to win. Who's already calculating what comes after losing.
Daddy.
I'm proud of you, he interrupts. I need you to hear that. I'm proud of the woman you became, even though I'm not sure I helped you become her. We talk for another hour. Small things. Memories. The summer I was 9, and he taught me to fish at Lake Martin. The Christmas I was 16 and burned the turkey so badly we ordered Chinese food and ate it on the good china. Moments that mattered in ways neither of us understood when we were living them. I'll call you tomorrow, he says before hanging up. After the meeting. We'll figure this out. He doesn't call tomorrow. I find out the same way everyone else does. Radio report at 6 a.m. Fire at a private estate outside Birmingham. Multiple fatalities. Accelerant detected. Authorities investigating, but no suspects in custody. I'm still in bed when I hear it. Still half asleep when the words arrange themselves into meaning. And then I'm not breathing right, and my hands are shaking, and I'm calling my father's phone over and overhearing it ring into voicemail, his voice on the recording saying, "Jonathan Hamilton, leave a message," like he's still somewhere that messages reach. Clint shows up at my door 3 hours later. I don't remember letting him in. Don't remember anything between the radio report and the moment I'm sitting on my couch with his arm around my shoulders, solid and cool and steady in a way that makes me realize I'm shaking apart. "I'm sorry," he says, and his voice carries something that sounds like genuine sorrow. "Barbara, I'm so sorry." "What happened?" My voice doesn't sound like mine. "The news said fire, but they don't know how it started, and nobody's saying who was there, but I know my father was supposed to be there, and if he was there, he was there." Clint's voice is quiet. Careful. They all were. The men from the gala. They called the meeting to discuss their legal situations, to coordinate their defense. And he's silent for a moment too long.
"They're gone, Barbara."
"All of them." "I'm sorry."
"I don't cry. Not yet."
Crying would make it real, and if I just stay frozen, stay exactly in this moment, maybe time will stop moving forward into the place where my father is dead and I'm alone. Clint stays with me all day. Makes phone calls I can't make. Handles details I can't think about. Guides me through the mechanics of grief with practiced competence, like he's done this before, like he knows exactly what someone needs when their world catches fire. He's perfect. That's what I'll remember later. He's exactly what I need him to be, which should have been my first warning. The funeral is 4 days later. Small, private, because most of the people who would have attended are dead or in custody or suddenly very invested in pretending they never knew Jonathan Hamilton. I stand at the graveside in Tuscaloosa where my mother is buried, where my father will be buried beside her, and I watch them lower him into Alabama soil that's been swallowing men like him since before this was Alabama. Clint stands beside me. Holds my hand. Doesn't say anything because there's nothing to say. When it's over, he drives me home, stays with me through another night where sleep feels impossible and morning feels cruel. "I don't understand," I say at 3 a.m. when we're both awake in the dark. "The fire? How did it start?" "The investigators think accelerant. Someone who knew what they were doing." "Who would?" But I stop. Because I know who would. Who had motive means opportunity. Who'd been systematically dismantling my father's world for months. Clint. Yes. "Did you?" I can't finish the question. Can't ask him if he killed my father because asking makes it real, and I'm not ready for it to be real. "I told you," he says quietly. Some collapses can't be stopped once they're in motion. Which isn't an answer. Which is exactly the problem. I start noticing things in the weeks that follow. Small things that don't fit right when I arrange them in my mind. The timing. My father's meeting happened exactly 60 days after that night at the Redmont. 60 days. The exact deadline Clint gave them. The precision. 7 men attended that meeting. 7 men died. No witnesses. No survivors. No mistakes. The way Clint talks about justice, unwavering, absolute, certain. Except when I ask him directly. Then suddenly he gets careful. Redirects. Changes the subject with practiced ease. I'm in his apartment in Birmingham one afternoon. He's been keeping me close, worried I'll fall apart alone, when I see the files. Just a glimpse before he closes the study door, but enough. Enough to see my father's name. Vernon Pierce's name. Randall Oakes. All the men from the gala. All the men from the fire. All documented. Organized. Marked with dates and notes in handwriting I recognize from months of watching him work. "What are those?" I ask when he comes back. "Work," he says. "Nothing you need to worry about." But I am worrying. Have been worrying since the funeral, since before the funeral, since maybe the first night he kissed me, and I felt something sharp underneath the tenderness. I start reviewing everything in my mind. Every introduction I made. Every dinner where I vouched for him. Every time I said Clint Jones is a friend of mine and watched doors open that had been closed to him for decades. The charity gala where I introduced him to Vernon Pierce's accountant. The fundraiser where he met the attorney who eventually flipped on Randall Oakes. The private dinner where I seated him next to a federal prosecutor's wife who happened to mention her husband's interest in corporate fraud. I was the map. The access point. The way in. And I never noticed because he made me feel loved while he was using me. I don't confront him. Not yet. Because confronting him means admitting what I already know, and once I admit it, I can't unknow it. Can't go back to the version of this relationship where I was chosen instead of positioned. But I start watching him differently. Start listening for what he doesn't say instead of what he does. Start understanding that 9 centuries of existence teaches you how to omit the truth without technically lying. He never lied. That's what breaks me when I finally let myself see it. He just loved me and used me in the same breath and somehow made me believe those things were separate. He proposes on a Tuesday evening in October, 6 months after my father's funeral. We're at his apartment in Birmingham, the penthouse overlooking the city, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows that make you feel like you're floating above Alabama instead of standing in it. He's made dinner. Something French I can't pronounce but tastes like he's been perfecting the recipe since the actual French Revolution. I've been waiting for this moment. Not hoping for it. Waiting. The way you wait for test results you already know will be bad. He gets down on one knee in his living room, and I watch him perform a gesture that probably meant something different the first dozen times he did it, back when proposing was about alliances between families instead of feelings between people. The ring is beautiful. Art Deco because he knows I love that period. A sapphire instead of a diamond because he remembers me saying once that I never understood why engagement rings had to be colorless. He's thought about this. Planned it. Made sure every detail would speak to me specifically. Which is exactly the problem. Barbara Hamilton, he says, and his voice carries that careful control I've learned to recognize as the sound of a man who's already decided how the conversation ends. Will you marry me? I look at him kneeling there, 900 years old, impossibly powerful, asking me a question he already knows the answer to because he's spent months positioning me exactly here, in this moment, where saying no would feel like betrayal. And I understand with perfect clarity what this proposal means. It's not an apology for using me. It's not a declaration of love that exists separate from strategy. It's consolidation. Marriage legitimizes his access to what remains of my father's world, silences any questions about his involvement in the investigations, binds me permanently to him in ways that make my testimony legally complicated and my loyalty socially expected. I should say no. Should walk out of this apartment, out of his life, out of the story he's been writing where I'm a chapter instead of a co-author. But I don't. Because somewhere between the funeral and tonight, I've made a decision of my own. I've been watching him the way he taught me to watch rooms, carefully, completely, looking for the patterns underneath the performance. And I've learned things about vampire law, about power structures, about the vulnerabilities that come with 9 centuries of certainty. He thinks I'm broken, grief-hollowed, dependent on the stability he provides in a world where everyone else I trusted is gone. He's wrong. I'm not broken. I'm sharpening. Yes, I say. His face does something I've never seen before, relief so profound it looks almost like pain, like he actually believed I might say no. Like my answer matters to him beyond its strategic value. Maybe it does. Maybe he does love me in whatever way a creature like him loves mortal women who remind him of painters from Vienna. But love doesn't negate use. They can coexist in the same breath, the same body, the same proposal. That's what I've learned. That's what women like me learn when we survive being positioned. He slides the ring onto my finger, kisses me, holds me like I'm something precious he's afraid of losing. And I let him believe I'm surrendering when what I'm actually doing is buying time. Because I'm going to study him now, the way he studied my father's world. I'm going to learn vampire law, vampire politics, vampire vulnerabilities. I'm going to understand exactly how his power works, so I know exactly where it breaks. I don't tell him this. Don't confront him with what I know about my own utility. Don't ask him if he killed my father or if he loved me before he needed me, or if there was ever a version of this relationship that wasn't built on my usefulness. I just smile, kiss him back, let him pour champagne older than Alabama and toast to our future like futures are promises instead of threats. I love you, he says, and I hear the truth in it.
He does.
In his way. In the way 9-century-old vampires Love mortal women who make their justice easier to execute. I love you too, I say, which is also true, and also not enough to save either of us from what comes next. The wedding gets planned quickly. Clint wants it done before the end of the year. For tax purposes, he says, which is probably true but also probably not the whole truth. Marriage protects him, makes me legally bound to silence, makes our relationship publicly legitimate in ways that shut down questions about why a vampire king suddenly had access to Alabama's most corrupt circles right before they all collapsed. I go through the motions, choose flowers, approve invitations, let him decide on the venue because he has better taste than I do, and 900 years of watching humans get married has given him opinions about what works. His world starts preparing for the wedding like it's a coronation. Ancient vampires sending gifts from courts I didn't know existed. Mortal dignitaries accepting invitations because turning down Clint Jones is the kind of insult that has consequences. My world is mostly silent, because everyone I would have invited is dead or in prison or suddenly very interested in pretending they never knew my father. I'm alone except for Clint, which is exactly how he needs me. But I'm learning. Every dinner with his associates, I'm cataloging how vampire politics work. Every conversation about wedding planning, I'm understanding how their laws function. Every moment he thinks I'm grieving, I'm actually studying. He shows me his library one afternoon. Centuries of books, some of them older than printing presses. Legal texts, historical records, documentation of power structures that predate countries. You can read anything you want, he says, generous in the way powerful men are generous when they think you're not a threat. I want you to understand my world if you're going to be part of it.
So I read.
Late at night when he thinks I'm sleeping. Early mornings when he's handling business. I learn about vampire hierarchies, about challenges to authority, about the specific ways immortal power can be unmade. I learn about vervain, about silver, about the precise angle and location required to drive a stake through a heart that's been beating for 9 centuries. I don't know yet that I'll use this knowledge. Don't let myself think that far ahead. But I'm collecting it anyway, storing it, building an arsenal of understanding that might matter someday when I'm ready to stop being useful and start being ungovernable. 3 weeks before the wedding, Clint finds me in his library at 2 a.m. reading a text about vampire marriage law. Can't sleep? He asks, not suspicious. Just concerned in that gentle way he's perfected. Just curious, I say. I want to understand what I'm entering into. He smiles, sits beside me, explains the passages I'm reading like he's genuinely happy I'm taking interest in his world. He doesn't notice that the book I'm actually absorbing is the one underneath, the one about dissolution of vampire bonds. About what happens when mortal partners die. About the specific legal vulnerabilities that come with binding yourself to human mortality. I'm not confronting him. Not yet. I'm building a case. Collecting evidence. Waiting for the exact right moment to show him what happens when the woman he positioned decides to reposition herself. The wedding is in 3 weeks. I'm wearing his ring, planning our future, smiling through fittings and tastings and all the performance of joy that weddings require. And every night, while he sleeps beside me believing I've accepted my place in his world, I'm teaching myself how to dismantle kings. The wedding takes place at the Birmingham Museum of Art on a Saturday in December. Clint chose the venue, said something about symmetry, marrying me surrounded by the kind of beauty I'd wanted to curate before my father's world consumed mine. It should feel romantic. Instead, it feels like he's built a beautiful cage and invited 300 witnesses to watch him lock the door. The dress is ivory silk, long sleeves, the kind of elegant restraint that makes you look like old money even if you're not. I stand in the bridal suite an hour before the ceremony looking at myself in the mirror, and I don't recognize the woman staring back. She looks composed, appropriate, like she's about to marry a man she loves instead of a man who orchestrated her father's death. My hands are steady when I hold the bouquet. White roses, winter jasmine, flowers that survive cold. The ceremony itself is immaculate. Clint has arranged everything with the same precision he brought to dismantling Alabama's corrupt syndicates. Every detail considered, every moment choreographed, every element designed to communicate exactly what he wants this marriage to mean. The guests are a study in contrasts. Ancient vampire elites who haven't attended a mortal wedding in decades, maybe centuries. They sit in the front rows dressed in clothes that cost more than cars, their faces carrying that particular stillness that comes from having survived everything history can throw at you. And scattered among them, mortal dignitaries, politicians, business leaders, people who have no idea why the air feels wrong, why something about this wedding makes their instincts scream even as their training keeps them smiling. I walk down the aisle alone. No father to give me away because my father is dead, killed in a fire that still hasn't been explained to anyone's satisfaction. The photographer captures me mid-stride. Later, when I see the photos, I'll notice that I look like I'm walking toward my execution with perfect posture. Clint stands at the altar in a suit that probably cost more than the venue rental. He watches me approach with something in his eyes that might be love or might be satisfaction. I've stopped being able to tell the difference. The ceremony is brief. Traditional. We say the words humans have been saying to each other for centuries, making promises about forever as if forever means the same thing to both of us. When the officiant says, "You may kiss the bride," Clint does, carefully, publicly, like he's sealing a contract instead of celebrating a beginning. The reception happens in the museum's main gallery, surrounded by art I used to dream about protecting. Champagne flows. A string quartet plays something baroque. Vampires and mortals mingle with the awkward politeness of people who speak different languages, but are committed to pretending they understand each other. I smile through it all. Dance with Clint when he asks. Accept congratulations from creatures old enough to remember when Alabama was still Creek territory. Play the role of the blushing bride while something in my chest counts down the hours until I can stop performing. Then comes the toast. Clint stands at the head table, crystal glass in hand. The same glass from that night at the Redmont, I realize. Or maybe just one exactly like it. Either way, it speaks to continuity. To the long arc of his existence where moments like this are just punctuation in a story that never ends. The room quiets. 300 people turning their attention to the vampire king who's just married a mortal woman young enough to be, well, young enough to be irrelevant in the span of his life. Young enough to be a choice that requires explanation. "Thank you all for being here," he begins, and his voice carries that easy authority that comes from centuries of being obeyed. It means a great deal to have our union witnessed by those who matter most. Our union. Not our marriage. Not our love. Our union. Like we're countries forming an alliance instead of people choosing each other. He talks about the importance of connections. About building bridges between worlds. About the strength that comes from partnerships forged with intention and maintained with respect. His words are polished, carefully non-committal, the kind of speech that says everything and nothing. Then he raises his glass higher. "To that lady of mine," he says. "Not Barbara. Not my wife. Not the woman I love. That lady of mine. Like I'm furniture he's pleased to have acquired. Like I'm a possession he's declaring publicly. Like I'm a thing that belongs to him now, contained, defined, harmless." The room applauds. Glasses clink. Someone in the back whistles. Everyone is smiling because they think they've just witnessed a romantic declaration, because mortals don't speak the language Clint's actually using, and vampires understand exactly what he's saying, but have no reason to object. I smile too. It's the smile I perfected at my father's events. The smile that says I'm delighted, I'm honored, I'm exactly where I want to be. It doesn't reach my eyes, but nobody's looking at my eyes. They're looking at the dress, the flowers, the beautiful tableau of a vampire king and his mortal bride proving that love transcends the boundaries of mortality. Clint sits back down beside me, reaches for my hand under the table, squeezes it with what I'm sure he believes is affection. "Did I do all right?" he asks quietly, like he's genuinely seeking my approval for a toast that just reduced me to property in front of everyone who matters in his world. "Perfect," I say. And I mean it. Because he's shown me exactly what I am to him. Not in private, where I could convince myself I misunderstood. Not through omission, where I could fill in the gaps with generous interpretation. But publicly.
Definitively.
In front of 300 witnesses who will now forever remember me as that lady of his, not as Barbara, not as myself, but as an extension of him. He doesn't notice the restraint in my smile, doesn't see the way my hand tightens around the champagne glass until my knuckles go white, doesn't register that I've stopped breathing normally, that I'm counting seconds until I can leave this gallery and this dress and this performance behind.
He thinks he's won.
Thinks he's successfully consolidated his position, legitimized his access, bound me permanently to his world in ways that make my silence guaranteed and my loyalty assumed. He's not wrong, but he's not completely right either. Because I'm still smiling 3 hours later when the reception ends and the guests disperse, and we're finally alone in the car driving back to his apartment. I'm still smiling when we walk through his door. Still smiling when he kisses me like this is the beginning of our forever. I smile through all of it, because he taught me something crucial tonight, something I needed to see with perfect clarity before I could do what comes next. He taught me that I was never a person to him, just a position, just a strategic acquisition, just that lady of his, interchangeable with any other woman who could have served the same function. And that knowledge, devastating, clarifying, final, is the last thing I needed to stop loving him enough to let him live. The smile stays on my face until the bedroom door closes. Then I let it drop, and I start counting down the hours until morning. We're alone at last in his bedroom overlooking Birmingham, the city lights spreading below us like constellations that forgot they were supposed to stay in the sky. Clint is relaxed in a way I haven't seen in months. The tension he's been carrying, the careful orchestration of our relationship, the precision required to position me exactly where he needed me, all of it has dissolved now that the wedding is done. Now that I'm legally, publicly, permanently his.
He pours us wine.
Something French, from a year I can't conceptualize. 1804, the label says. The year Haiti won its independence. The year Napoleon crowned himself emperor. The year Clint was already ancient. To us, he says, raising his glass. I touch my glass to his. Watch him drink. He doesn't notice that I barely sip mine. He thinks he's earned this moment. Earned my trust, my closeness, my surrender. 9 months of careful courtship, 6 months of consolidation after my father's death, 3 weeks of wedding planning. All of it leading here, to this room, to this moment where I'm finally, completely his. He's not wrong about having earned something.
He's just wrong about what?
Come here, he says softly, setting down his glass, reaching for me with hands that have touched centuries of women who probably all believed they were different, special, chosen. I go to him. Let him pull me close. Let him kiss me with that careful tenderness he's perfected over lifetimes of practice. His hands find the zipper of my wedding dress, ivory silk that costs more than some people make in a year, and I feel him start to slide it down. Wait, I say quietly. He stops immediately, pulls back to look at me with concern that might even be genuine. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I touch his face, let my fingers trace the line of his jaw. I want to do something for you first. For our wedding night. Something special. His expression softens. Shifts into something that might be affection or might be satisfaction that I'm performing my role exactly as expected. You don't have to. I want to. I kiss him. Trust me? He smiles. Of course. Of course he trusts me. Why wouldn't he? I'm that lady of his. Contained, defined, harmless. I'm the grieving daughter who needed his stability. I'm the mortal woman who said yes to forever with a creature who doesn't understand what forever costs when you only get one. Lie down, I tell him. Close your eyes.
He does.
Actually does. Lies back on his bed, the bed that's probably seen centuries of moments like this, and closes his eyes like I'm about to give him a gift instead of a reckoning. I reach into my clutch. The small silver purse I carried through our wedding. Inside, vervain extract in a vial I've been preparing for 3 weeks. Silver-laced cord I stole from his own library, from bindings he used on books old enough to need protection from time. And something else. Something I took from a locked case when he thought I was just admiring his collection of historical artifacts. A stake. Ash wood. Approximately 9 inches long. Sharpened to a point fine enough to slip between ribs without catching. The vervain goes into his wine glass while his eyes are closed. Just 3 drops. Enough to weaken, not enough to kill. I learned the dosage from his own texts, the ones he showed me so generously, thinking I was just a curious bride wanting to understand her husband's world. Drink this, I say softly, offering him the glass. One more toast. Just us. He opens his eyes. Smiles. Takes the glass without question because why would he question me? Why would he suspect that the woman he's positioned so carefully might have learned to position him right back? He drinks. I watch his expression change. Confusion first. Then recognition. Then something that might be betrayal or might be respect. I can't tell. Don't care. Barbara, his voice is already weakening. What did you? Vervain, I say calmly. Conversationally. Like I'm explaining something simple to someone who should have known better. 3 drops. Enough to make you vulnerable, but not enough to kill you. That part comes next. I move quickly now. The silver cord around his wrists, binding them to the headboard he probably commissioned from artisans who are dust now. He tries to fight, but the vervain has stolen his supernatural strength, left him as weak as the mortals he's spent 9 centuries being stronger than. Barbara, stop.
Please.
Let me explain. Explain what? I'm standing beside the bed now, stake in hand, looking down at the man I loved and the monster who used me in the same breath. Explain how you orchestrated my father's death? How you used me to access his world? How you married me not because you loved me, but because it consolidated your position? I do love you. You love what I gave you. Access. Legitimacy. A way into rooms that had been closed to you. That's not the same thing as loving me. He's struggling against the silver bindings. They're burning his skin. I can smell it, see the places where his flesh is trying to heal, and can't because silver doesn't let vampire bodies remember how to be whole. If you're going to kill me, he says, and his voice has steadied despite the pain, at least do it for the right reasons. Your father was guilty. The men at that gala were guilty.
I didn't lie about that.
I know they were guilty. I sit on the edge of the bed. The stake feels heavy in my hand. Heavier than 9 inches of ash wood should feel. That's not why I'm doing this. Then why? Because you called me that lady of yours at our wedding. Because you reduced me to possession in front of everyone who matters in your world. Because you showed me exactly what I am to you, not a person, not a partner, just a strategic acquisition. And I need you to understand something before you die. I lean closer. Let him see my face. Let him see that I'm not crying, not shaking, not doing any of the things grieving mortal women are supposed to do when they're forced to violence. I'm not killing you because you're a monster. I say quietly. I'm killing you because you made me into a tool and forgot that tools can learn to cut the hands that use them. The stake goes in cleanly, just left of center, angled up. The way his books taught me. The way 9 centuries of vampire law says a mortal partner can legally end a bond when betrayal is proven.
He gasps.
Not in pain. Vampires don't feel pain the way we do. In surprise. Like, even now, even with Ashwood piercing his heart, he can't quite believe I'm capable of this. Barbara, my name. Finally. Not that lady. Not my wife. Just my name, spoken like he's finally seeing me instead of what I could do for him. Too late. Wrong context. Exactly the problem. I know, I say softly. And I do know. I know he's trying to say he's sorry or he loves me, or he didn't mean it the way it sounded. I know there are words he wants to give me now that he's dying, words he never gave me when giving them might have mattered. But I'm not interested in deathbed confessions. His body starts to desiccate. That's what happens when you kill vampires. They don't bleed out like mortals. They just unmake. 9 centuries of stolen time catching up all at once, turning him back into what he would have been if 1123 had killed him the way it was supposed to. I sit with him until it's finished. Until there's nothing left but ash and the silver bindings, and a wedding ring I'll never wear again. Then I stand. Smooth my wedding dress. Look at myself in his mirror one last time. I don't look like a widow. Don't look like a murderer. I look like a woman who's just learned that sometimes the only way to stop being useful is to become ungovernable. I don't flee. Don't panic. Don't do any of the things his world will expect me to do. Instead, I go to his library. Start reading everything he didn't want me to understand. Start learning about vampire courts, hierarchies, the specific laws that govern what happens when a mortal kills a king. Because this isn't the end. This is my education. And I'm an excellent student.